Hi everyone, this is Allan McKay. Welcome to episode 162. We're going to optimize learning. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Allan McKay podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
Have you ever sent in your reel wondering why you didn't get the callback? Or what was the reason you didn't get the job? Here's the thing, most of us think you just put your latest work on your reel to some cool music and send it off, and then you get the job. A lot of us aren't aware that the majority of the reels sent to studios are skipped through and sometimes never even watched in the first place. The fact is, everything we're taught about landing a job as an artist is wrong. Over the past 20 years working for studios like Industrial Light and Magic, Ubisoft, Blur Studio, I built hundreds of teams, hired thousands of artists, and reviewed tens of thousands of reels. That's why I decided to write a book from the perspective of somebody that actually does the hiring. Learn the exact formula to captivate and qualify you as the obvious artist for the job, how to build a reel that ranks high on YouTube and attracts studios to you. The best part is with this book, you can get it right now absolutely free. Whether you're in design, games, TV, or film, go over to allanmckay.com/myreel. Okay, welcome to a brand new episode. So before we get into this, I just wanted to mention we got a lot of really cool episodes coming up. And if you aren't already subscribed to this podcast, make sure to take a moment to do so. And that way, every Tuesday morning, you're going to get hit with some knowledge. And hopefully it'll be the fresh morning coffee that you need to kind of kickstart your day. That being said, I recently did a career intensive. It was a lot of fun. And we went through a lot of cool stuff. It was really great to go through. But one thing that kind of came up a lot, which was such a trivial thing, but I think for those of you with that pain, which is getting the overwhelm of learning and how to study better, I thought I would address this and I would get into the guts of it all. So I hope you find this valuable. Now, if you want to check out the show notes, go to allanmckay.com/162 to get to episode 162. In addition to that, I'm going to be releasing some brand new training this month, Venom, which is going to be a high-end free visual effects crash course on creating a lot of visual effects from the film Venom. And this is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be really cool. This will only be available for a few weeks, and it's only going to be available on my Inner Circle email list. So if you go to allanmckay.com/inside, you can register there. You get notified when it comes out. This will never go public for free. In fact, I will use this chance to mention that all the free training, I've been putting out a lot over the years, and I've always put it up and then taken it back down because I want to force you to actually get off your butt and do it. And I found that to be really effective. A lot of us just love to collect files and let them sit and collect dust on our hard drive in our downloads folder and never actually take action. And so since I started doing this, it meant that everyone would be in a rush, in a frenzy. They would go out there, they would download these videos, they would go through them, panicking, knowing they're running out of time, and they would actually do the work. And I found this to be the most effective way to do it, because when I take it away again, this was your chance to absorb and take action and also immerse yourself in an environment while everyone else is going through it too. So not just one or two of us, but the whole world is going through doing the training, decay, fireball, tower, reverse gravity, plasma, so many other ones have been putting out. And these are months of work to get to that point, to only put them out for a couple of weeks, but it means that you guys are getting the results. So one thing I will be doing in the future is I'm going to be putting these lessons up, these crash courses up for sale on my website. So that means that you can go buy it for a couple $100 off of my website if you want to go through it. But I mention this because this is incentive for you right now to actually go and do it for free. In other words, you can go and get Venom and you can go through the training and make the most of it. Or if you don't, then you can get it later on, but you're going to have to pay for that. Either way, this is going to force you to actually go through it. I find that I could put out the best content on the planet, but if it's free, a lot of people aren't going to take it seriously. They're going to say, it doesn't have any value because there's no price attached. So even though I spend tens of thousands of dollars on creating the content, which is accurate, I do, and then I put it out for free, you won't take action because there isn't a price value. So now there will be. You can buy these courses for a couple $100s off of my website if you want to, or you can take advantage of it while there's time, while it's free. So when I release this in a couple of weeks, it'll be available for 3 weeks, and then it goes away. And when it does resurface, it will be a paid product. To me, I'm not caring about the profit. This isn't something that I'm trying to say, great, I'm going to get rich and retire off of a couple $100s. It's not the fact. It's to do with you having the incentive to go through the material, to actually take ownership of it and do it. And I've had to experiment a lot to see what it takes for you to get off your butt and actually take action. And when it comes to this training, this is exactly what I feel needs to be done for you to take action to actually consume it. So the time constraint was very effective. It means that you guys are actually doing it, which is great. And if you want to do it later, they will resurface, but they'll have a price next to it, which is great. It means that if you go do it now, if you sign up and go through the material, it's free. You're actually saving hundreds of dollars already just by doing that. So that should be even more of a motivation to consume it. Because I don't care how you consume it as long as you do. So go to allanmckay.com/inside and you can get access to material there. And on top of that, I've got loads of other great stuff coming up. But that being said, I want to get right into the meat of this episode. Let's dive in. So one of the subjects that came up last night in a live career intensive that I did with all of my students in my mentorship and my live action series, this is something we do a couple times a year, is a really focused career building and habit breaking intensive. And it's a lot of fun. They sometimes go for 3 or 4 hours. Like, they get intense. And for instance, yesterday, I got nothing else done. I got up at 4 a.m. I prepped for 3 hours, and then the session went for 2 hours and 40 minutes. And I got like a couple of things done that day, but I was just drained. And then I did another one in the afternoon because I want to make sure that this works for everyone's time zone. So some people are getting ready for work, or they're just coming home from work if they're in Europe in the morning. And then in the afternoon, again, some other people are able to attend because they finished work and they're home now, or whatever it's going to be. Some people actually show up to both, and it's kind of interesting. So for fun, I actually did a live stream of that, and I've never ever publicly shown what goes on in these things. And it's a little bit different this time around too, because I wanted to cover so much. Usually I'll unmute people and I'll talk with them and work through what they're going through, but this time around it was a one-way thing. I had everyone submit their questions, and I just hit as much content as I could. So that was really great. And we covered a lot of cool stuff. I was really excited about this. One of the subjects I was just thinking about this morning in my sauna as I was getting ready for this is there's a lot of great questions. I'd love to cover a few of those perhaps on the podcast as individual episodes at some point. But one of the things that did pop up, there was a very subtle question. In other words, like, a few people asked it, and to me, like, there were some really great questions, and then there were ones that, like this one, which I don't think were great. But the more I think about it, the more I realize, like, it is a bit of a roadblock for a lot of people, and that is where to put your attention when learning. I think that a lot of people tend to get really overwhelmed because they say, like, okay, I got to get good at VFX. And as I've talked about in recent episodes with mindset, things like that, there's a lot of people that either are tracking the wrong metrics, or blatantly just putting focus on the wrong things, or just expecting those quick results, expecting everything to come to them because they swipe that credit card or whatever it might be. Now, I do think that a lot of us do get overwhelmed when it comes to learning, especially in the beginning where we have that pressure, because it's basically, I gotta get a job and I need to make money. I saw this post on Reddit the other day, which was, I don't care what I have to do, I need to make $10,000 by tomorrow. What do I have to do? You know, and again, those situations, like, let's say that, you know, you are in that dire situation, you should never be in that situation in the first place. You should be setting yourself up for success, not waking up one day a failure. So you constantly do that check-in with yourself and see, like, where am I at? Now, in the case of wanting to learn, wanting to work at ILM doing visual effects or whatever it is your goals are. And they don't even need to be VFX related or whatever. But if you want to learn a subject, the way that I do it, the way that I treat everything, I have talked about these subjects in the past, but I'm applying this to a certain situation now. And that is that I'm always going to learn just in time, not just in case. So in other words, I'm not going to go and learn all of these intricate things that may or may not be applicable to me down the line. I heard an amazing one the other day, which was I'd surveyed some of my inner circle email list. And if you're not on my inner circle, go to allanmckay.com/inside. I apologize for those little tings. That's my microphone arm. It needs to be loosened up a bit. So I surveyed everyone to know like what are their big questions and what are their big goals. And then how do they think that they need to achieve them? How do they think that they're going to accomplish that goal? And it's really interesting because someone might say that, for instance, I want to go work at ILM. And then how do you think you're going to get there? And it's like, I'm going to master Maya. I'm going to learn it inside out. And this is where me talking about mindset and metrics the past few episodes, like hinting towards this stuff, that's where that comes in. If your metrics are off, if you think that to get here, I need to go and learn all of this other thing, and that's going to get me there, that unfortunately is what a lot of people do with college. They go and they get their PhD, they go get their master's in a subject, thinking that that is what they need to start working. Now, the whole subject of universities is a whole other topic. And there are situations where going and learning and studying at college is critical. I mean, if you want to be a doctor, I'd hope that you don't just watch a few YouTube videos. But in this day and age, you can accelerate the process if the credentials aren't important to you. If you want to get into the work, you don't need to go and study for 8 years to dive into certain things. It's up to you whether that's part of your journey. If you want to learn it because it's fun and it's an experience that you want to go through, and the credentials are perhaps important to you or your family, whatever the reasons may be, that's fine. But if you have a result of, I want to work at this company, going and doing a massive epic journey specifically to land a job at a certain place when there's no mention of said requirements, that already says your metrics are completely off. And you got to check this stuff. You got to do your due diligence. You got to look into what's important. What are the requirements? You want to fast track all the things that you're doing. So it's the same way by saying, I'm going to learn a piece of software inside out. There's nothing to gain from that unless this is something that you want to do, so that way you feel comfortable and competent in what you use. You know, if I'm going to get a hammer and I want to study every single bit of it and how it's used and how I could use it in many different ways I didn't think about, like cracking open a beer, awesome, I can go and do that. But is that required to hit a nail? So when we do feel that pressure, when we do feel that overwhelm, I think that sometimes we're putting too much pressure on ourselves and we're overcomplicating the process, when what it might be is simply looking at what are the key metrics, what are the key requirements. So I use the Maya metaphor because it's just a brilliant one, because it's kind of like, I've been using Maya since 1.0, since was a 97, something like that. And it's like 97, 98. And I don't know it inside out, and I don't care to know it inside out. But if you needed me to do a shot, if you needed me to supervise you, I can do those things. And there's going to be things that I don't know. And when I hit those walls, that's when I start looking. It's the same thing with things I know inside out and things I don't know. I'm going to look, I'm going to learn. And to segue for a moment, we had this discussion yesterday with my team about someone that we've been talking to who was wanting to study effects and do effects. And he said that he doesn't want to problem solve. Because I said to him that if you want to do visual effects for a living, you got to be a problem solver. You got to embrace that as part of the process, because it is. There's not a single day where I just sit down and I can start clicking and doing what I'm needed to do without needing to think like, how the hell do I do this? Or what if I did this? Or why is this not working? And I think that the better problem solver you are, the better you're going to be at those situations. Now, for someone to say that they don't want to problem solve, they literally just want to be able to sit down and click the buttons and do all these things. There's two things I need to say to that. One is, it's the wrong industry. And if you were to get a job doing that, then I guarantee there's no growth in it. You are literally going to be the cog that is making the snowflakes for a TV station or whatever and doing that one thing, and you are highly replaceable. And that's the brutal truth about that. If you're not willing to grow, and if you want a job that's easy and that you can just sit down and know what buttons to press, and that's the complete effort that you're putting into it, in other words, you're a button pusher, then who's to say there's not another person who can come and take that job, who can push the button a little better than you? So growth is so critical, and it's something that we overlook. And for someone to say that I want a job that's easy, without getting really pent up about this, to make something easy requires you to put in the work, to grow and put in all the work ahead of time, to front load that by learning all these things, by pushing yourself. You do all that now so that way the job is easy later on. I put out an episode called Momentum not too long ago, and that was exactly it, about how things are hard in the beginning. That's natural selection. That is culling out the people who are going to give up. And the funny thing is that it gets easier and easier the longer you stick with it. But to say that I only want a job that's easy, your job can be easy once you put in the work. If you're not willing to put in the work, then you don't deserve the job. Now, I hope that makes sense, but I need to say that because, again, hearing those sorts of things, this is where it all comes back to mindset. So tying that in, that I don't want to problem solve, I want to just be able to magically know it all and know what buttons to press and not have to think about it. There's so many incongruent parts in that sentence that it's just not how it works. Now, with me and how I learn is that I problem solve. In other words, when I'm wanting to learn new software, I don't learn it inside out. I learn what I need, and I'm very results driven. And I think that's the critical thing to be able to accelerate your learning, is to be results driven. You need a reason to be doing it, and therefore you have a goal in mind, and you're able to measure your success and also push yourself or test yourself in ways, because you wouldn't ever get these from a book or a manual or whatever. In other words, if you want to learn something inside out, that's not going to get you a job. I don't care if you know Maya inside out. Can you do the shot? Can you do the work? That to me is the only metric that matters. And that's the only metric that matters to everyone else, because their problem, their thing they're trying to solve is they need 5 effects TDs, 2 animators, 3 compositors. They need 2 modelers and a rigger. Okay, so if they need all of these people, the world doesn't revolve around you. They're trying to tick a box. It isn't anything more complicated than that. Can you do the job? Great. Can you do the job? Well, I know Maya inside out. Great. Can you do the job? I know the software inside out, so I can probably figure out how to do it. Well, this other person just said yes. That's all I need to know, because I have all of these other people on my list I need to hire. That is literally how staffing works. We like to think that it's going to be all hugs and it's going to be much more intricate than it is, but it's literally problem solving on a different level. They're trying to solve their problem, which is I need to put butts in seats. Now, going back to how a lot of us feel that pressure, like I need a job right now, I need to get this right now, I don't have time to make a reel, I don't have time to learn software. This is how a lot of people are feeling. I won't say thinking, I'm going to say feeling, okay? And it overrides everything. So having that pressure is really tricky. And I'm going to jump around a little bit here, but there was someone I knew who came to LA, and he literally just showed up and figured, great, I'm going to get a job. And he didn't have any savings, he didn't have anything, and he just expected that being in LA meant that he'd get work. And it's because whenever he spoke to studios in LA, they would say, well, we only hire people in LA. So in other words, he just showed up and expected that by showing up, he'll get work. And I feel like that's the effort a lot of us have. It's like, I showed up, reward me. And showing up is better than the other guy, but it isn't the only path of action that you need to take. So this got really terrible. He didn't get a job. He ran out of money very quickly. And the worst part is, this isn't the first time he had done the exact same thing. This time around, he's trying to get an apartment, and because he didn't have a job, no one would give him an apartment. And it's catch-22. So I got a very long email, which was, what should I do? Should I give up my dreams and go home? Or what do I do because I need a job so I have a place to live? I'm living in my car. The whole thing was just a fucking disaster. And like I said, it's not the first time he had done that. My advice for him was just get your shit together. Go get a job at Best Buy or go be a security guard. Like, get a job to take care of your immediate problem. Forget about the visual effects part, because he was so focused on that. Like, where do I get a job in effects so I can have a place to live? And it's like, dude, fuck you. Go get a job so you can afford to live and take care of yourself. And the VFX thing, you can worry about later. Congratulations, you're now in LA. Focus on living, and then you can focus on that later. Once you have a foundation, once you have a place to sleep and eat and put food on the table, then you can worry about all the other things which are not important right now. This is not an immediate issue to you. And I think he took that a little too literally because he did get a job at Best Buy. But this is the same way that occasionally I'll have a student come through the course, through the live action series, who is just like, great, I just started this course and I'm looking to get started working in the next 2 months. And for some people that is possible, but if you're just starting out, it's not. Visual effects is a process. It's a language. It's a journey. It's something that you got to commit to. It's a career. It is not a job. It's not like going to work at KFC and saying, show me the ropes and can I start next week? This is something that takes time. And there is a lot of other people who want your job as well. So again, that's why putting time into your career, all these different areas, is such an intricate part. But again, it's hard in the beginning, but it gets easier and easier and easier. So I bring all this up because this is important when it comes to the fact that a lot of us put so much pressure on ourselves to get results right away that we basically convince ourselves, I don't have time to learn, I just need the result. And this is the number one problem that we run into. We're so overwhelmed, we're putting so much pressure on ourselves, we're saying, I need to do this right now because I don't have money, I don't have this, I blah, 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 blah. That is what's holding you back because you're not willing to go in. And until you change that mindset, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to learn. And sometimes it's just a matter of taking the pressure off. If you need a job, go get a job. If you're smart and you've listened to the podcast, maybe you'll try and get one that is related to this industry and you can start to immerse yourself and do all those things. Go serve coffee, go wrangle render jobs, go work at the cafe next to the studio. And that way you can meet everyone and mention like, oh yeah, I love visual effects. You could be that guy or that girl who's always pitching your reel. I had a bar I loved in Santa Monica, and the problem was that one of the bartenders, he knew who I was, and he was always pitching his reel. But even if you're pumping gas, it doesn't matter. As long as you're taking care of yourself and the problems at hand, the immediate, then you can focus on that without that pressure being there. I think pressure in the sense of having accelerated goals is very important, but putting pressure on yourself where you're so overwhelmed, you quit before you start, which is the problem that we're all going through. That is the thing that you need to take care of. So before you can get into the learning, and I apologize for having to front load this, but this is, what needs to be said before anything else applies, is whatever the pressure is, whatever it is, the key things that are derailing you, you need to eliminate. You need to take care of first before you can say, great, now the pressure's off, now I can learn. Now, when it comes to the actual learning part, that becomes easy then because, again, you're not trying to overwhelm yourself by learning all this information. A lot of us do that. We think that we need to learn everything to do with science and electricity specifically to turn a light bulb on, instead of realizing I just need to flick a switch. Even when it comes to cameras, learning the ins and outs of cinematography, learning how a camera sensor works, learning the difference between lenses, learning all the ways that light is processed inside of a camera, all of that is very important to experience as you go through your journey, but it isn't a requirement to take a photo. You can get started now, and the real key thing is just to do it and continue to do it and experiment and have fun with it. And if you're not having fun with it, then you're going to derail as well. You're going to put so much pressure on yourself. So learning is a critical part that a lot of us get that overwhelmed with. And I think that the key thing for me has always been that I'm not trying to learn everything inside out. I'm coming with a goal. I'm coming with a result that I want to achieve. And by doing that, it simplifies everything. Because instead of needing to learn it all, I learn what I need and then I expand my knowledge from there. And this is how anyone who wants to learn fast does it, is that you go in and you say, okay, I want to get a job at ILM. Well, I need to learn 3D. Great. Well, how about I go and focus on a reel? That is my goal. So I'm just going to keep it simple because I don't know much 3D. So let me just do something that doesn't require too much work. I'm going to model a statue and have that statue turn to sand and fall apart. Great. That's the goal. How do I model a statue? Okay, well, let's start out with looking at my options. I can make a terrible one. I could use photogrammetry. There's so many different options to how you can approach it, but either way, I can model something, then it's like, great, how do I turn it to sand? I can Google that, I can look it up, I can look for tutorials, but the key thing is that I'm looking at what the next step is. I'm trying to keep everything simple because I can layer it on later on. I can add more later on. I can make it more complex later on, but by keeping it simple, keeping it lean is achievable. So the live action series, the very first term, all we do is we focus on one shot, but we go through it all. I literally start from scratch. I treat this like a real production shot, and I say, great, this is the turnover. I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to walk you through what we want to accomplish. I'm going to do paint overs, concept paintings. I'm going to show you it all. This is what I want it to look like. This is how I think you should go about it. Now let's begin, like a real movie. And then we go through and we do it all. We focus on doing the destruction. We focus on doing the pyro, all the bits and pieces, and we break it down. We continue to go through one bit at a time. And then term 2, we're doing an entire city getting destroyed by asteroids raining down. But we're now using many different ideas. We're adding little things that we hadn't covered before. We're now expanding our knowledge. And I've carefully designed this in a way that we are able, as long as you do the work, you're able to expand your knowledge very quickly. And I love the success stories that I'm hearing left and right at the moment from a lot of people who are going off and getting their dream jobs. They're getting into big studios. And I love the feedback I'm getting from studios because they're amazed that people are coming in understanding a film pipeline. Most people come in, they're just starting, they can do good effects, but it's basically having to learn the film pipeline, learn the process, and get good. Whereas everyone is just kind of hitting the ground running. So you start with something that's achievable and you build on that later on. You don't need to get complicated later on. I'm going to destroy a whole city. I'm going to do all these different things. So I'm always going to look at it that way. When I had a lot of people yesterday saying, the way I'm learning is I'm just doing one thing at a time, but like, how do I learn everything? It's like, no, like that's how you do it. You do it one thing at a time, but you're results driven. You have one goal. So let's say a shot. And I'm going to look at, okay, well, what do I need to do to achieve this? I'm going to need to do what I think is this, this, and this. Let's focus on this one piece. How do I do that? And then I go and play around with it and I get stuck. I Google. Honestly, at this point, I'll just Google stuff because that is the easiest way. There's going to be tutorials out there. There's going to be images. There's going to be people posting stuff. Otherwise, there might be a manual, or at least I can find what little hints that might help me towards it. They might just be things that might just give me an idea to try out. But usually it's going to come back to me experimenting. And I can do that either in my shot, or I can go and do a little separate scene and just try and experiment with it until I get good results. Then I can take that and apply it to what I'm doing. I'm working on the Venom training that I'm going to be releasing in a few weeks. And originally, like, the whole concept's changed now because thankfully I've gotten a few really amazing people to jump on this as well. But originally it's going to be this close-up shot, and I was going to have to keep it simple because it was mostly going to be me. So that meant that I would need to do the character animation, I would need to do all the character effects, shoot it all, light it, composite it, track it, do all that stuff. And it meant that I can do all those things, but I know that there are certain things that if I were to go too far with, I could risk ruining it altogether. And that is like character animation, for instance. I want to keep it fairly straightforward rather than someone jumping around and doing all these crazy things. So I didn't set myself up for failure. I set myself up knowing, okay, well, like if this is what I'm achieving, then I'm going to have like, a lot of liquid effects like saliva, the goo, the kind of tenderly arm things that he has, all these bits and pieces. And each one I would research, figure out and get the look going well. I could spend half a day or a day or whatever, and then implement that into my shot bit by bit and keep adding to it. And it worked. I was able to get all those bits and pieces. Now the whole shot's changed and it's going to be way cooler. I can't wait to show everyone, but that is how I'll do something. And even though I know all this software, I'm still having to go learn. I'm still having to go troubleshoot. I'm still having to go figure things out. It isn't like I can just sit down and click buttons like that person I mentioned. But it might sound too simple, but that is exactly how I'll learn anything. I'll set a goal, an achievable goal, and I'll build upon that. If I want to go learn music, then I'm just simply going to learn how to play one song. And it means that that might initially be just a couple of strings, and I'll go from there, or a couple of keys and go from there. But that doesn't mean I can innovate, I can do anything else, I can repeat. I'm literally the button pusher at that point, but it's a starting point. From there, you can experiment, you can continue to build on that. I think music is actually a really good comparison to visual effects because it's not something that you're going to sit down and master overnight. When I was 9 years old, I used to walk to the local store every afternoon, get some candy or something like that back in Australia. And I think her name was Monique. There's a girl in my class. It was a grade 4. And there's a lot of people in my school who are just studied and immersed themselves in music. And it's basically all that they were allowed to do. Their parents would allow them to do. But for her, she was playing the violin. And every day I'd walk past her house, and I could actually hear her playing the violin. And it is that obsession that a lot of us have, like whether it's your parents making you do it, but it's an everyday thing to get that skill up. And I know so many musicians who that was their childhood. And it might be kind of something that you might think like, wow, that's such a hard life, like walking by every day when you're having fun with your friends and this person is locked in a room playing music for 2 or 3 hours a day, every single day. But that's what it takes to get good. And with visual effects, like, I don't think it's as beautiful as the violin, but we have to put in that exact amount of time. And we get looked at as being weirdos for doing it because you're up all night making something cool or blowing something up. And some people don't get it. And like looking in from the outside, like I've got friends who would always say like Allan was just always on his computer, just obsessed. Like he was just there working till daylight every single day. That's all he did. And it's true. Like I had a goal. I had a big goal. I wanted to move to the States and I wanted to work in movies. And I knew that putting in the time, learning the stuff, making a reel, making a better reel, having those results. One of these reels is going to get me a job. One of these reels is going to prove what I can do. And each time I threw away a reel because it didn't get me a job and I started a new one, it would get better. And I could tell myself, let alone the feedback I would get. I could just feel that I was going up a new level every single time. But it's how I learned, was saying, okay, like I've just watched Men in Black or whatever movies were out at the time and Independence Day, and that would inspire me. I'd go and have an idea and I would go and make that. And I wouldn't know how to do it, but it would put me on that path. Me learning the software, I didn't know all the bits of 3ds DOS, what am I saying? I didn't know it all, but I knew what I needed to do the work. And to this day, like there's features coming out every day. I'm not trying to stay on track of all the software. I'm able to do what I need and then I can learn and expand from there. I'm always happy to experiment. So I hope that makes sense, but a lot of people seem to be caught up on trying to learn the software inside out instead of being results driven. Because the other thing is that if you read a manual, even if you go through the, I'll do air quotes here, tutorials that come with a product, most of the time it's not going to challenge you. It's not going to push you. You're not going to be put in situations that you will be in production where you need to do something and you're like, man, this wasn't covered in the manual. So replicating what others are doing, building a reel, doing the thing that you will be doing for a living, having that simulated environment, that's the way to learn, because that way you're actually doing the job and the pressure's off. You don't have someone giving you due dates, but you should be doing that for yourself. But by doing that, you're going to run into problems along the way. You're going to say like, man, like, why is this coming out blurry? Or why is this crashing all the time? What's going on here? These are things that you're probably not going to experience in that perfectly contained environment. And that's why, I might have done I did some training DVDs back in like 2004. I did tutorials back then, and it would be like, here's how to create some cigarette smoke. Here's how to do this. You don't see me do that stuff now. You see me saying, here's how we're going to take an entire shot from start to finish, a real production shot. Because learning to create cigarette smoke, awesome. That's great. But how do you render that? How do you make it sit in a shot? What if you're making a mistake of working on that smoke on a black background, which by default we all do? One of the most common effects mistakes that I see a lot of people make, because then they go to comp it and they're like, oh, like this is no alpha at all. Like it's too transparent. It's like 5% alpha. Like what the hell is going on? Putting yourself in a real environment, simulating what's really going on, you're going to run into these issues and you're going to learn from it. And it means that you're not that person making that mistake down the line. That's why half the time we're either working on a real plate or we're working on like a green background, something that has color. So that way we can see the transparency levels and we can, counteract those issues that come up. So the training that I do is doing real shots, because that way when you go and get a job, you can say like, yeah, I've been doing this for a year with Allan, not I've been doing tutorials and I'm starting to get there. I can make a cool explosion. Like anyone can make an explosion, but can you finish a shot? Because that is what's going to get you the job. And that's the only thing that's going to allow you to raise your prices is, can you finish shots? not can you get it 50% of the way there. And I hate to say it, but like a lot of juniors, this is the problem. They get about halfway through a shot and then they start spinning wheels. They're not getting any progress. So it's all about being able to final something. And that's how you should be learning as well. You shouldn't be so concerned about all the other stuff. You should be able to sit down and say, okay, well, what's my goal? I want to make a T-Rex. How do I go about that? I want to make it run. I want to make little splashes around its feet. I want to make it look real. I want to make it integrate into a shot. How do I track the camera so that way I can shoot some footage and get that in there? Bit by bit, you're learning, and bit by bit, you're actually testing and pushing yourself a lot more than any of the other training the manual or anything else is going to tell you. So this is how I learn, and this is how most, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, like most successful people, anyone who wants to master something quickly and they're able to master a lot of things, they do it by learning what they need, not learning what everyone says, go learn this inside out and you'll be good. Read this book and you'll be good. If I want to get better at talking to people, I'm going to talk to people. I'm not going to read a book. There's only so much theory that you can go through without doing it yourself. And I love that a lot of times, like, let's say with marketing and business, that's one thing that there's, even with psychology, there's a lot of things that I've done because I went out there and did it, and then later reading it in books, because I love books. I'm not saying don't read books. I'm saying go out there and do it. And I love then reading about it later and people saying, oh yeah, like this is the thing it took me 10 years to do and to figure out. And I always do it now. And I'm like, oh man, I've been doing this whole time. That's so cool to get that reassurance that like, this is how everyone else did it. Cause I figured that out on my own, and I get that all the time because I'm out there doing it. So the way I do things is based on results, not based on theory. So I hope this makes sense. I hope that this simplifies things a little bit for you because, again, it got brought up so much that people feel like they need to learn all these things that aren't necessary, because it's not. Like, if you want to learn other areas, put yourself out of your comfort zone and learn something new, but do it yourself. If you're like, man, I've been learning character animation this whole time and I haven't learned anything about modeling, great, go model something and go do the training and do everything else, but don't just, figure I've got to go and learn everything to do with polygons and NURBS and, patches and everything else out there. Like, give yourself a task and say, well, I'm going to do this task. Even if you're a modeler and you've been doing modeling the whole time, but you're like, well, I never learned anything about photogrammetry. I never learned anything about ZBrush or Mudbox or whatever. Great. Give yourself a goal. Say, I'm going to do a character and make Venom, the Predator, whatever it might be. Do what you always do, but say, this time I'm going to make it in this. Or this time I'm going to make it in a day. This time I'm going to make a cartoony kind of character because I always do realistic ones. Whatever it is, challenge yourself, but challenge yourself by doing, not challenge yourself by overwhelm. So I think this episode is one that for a lot of people, it might not resonate. It might be like, well, yeah, I knew that. But I know that there are some of you out there who are overwhelming yourself, frustrating yourself, putting too much pressure on yourself, not willing to commit to learn because you're running that circle around and around thinking like, I don't have time, I need to get a job now. But more importantly, this is about accelerated learning. It's about figuring out what you need just in time, not just in case, and going all in on it and getting everything through results, not getting everything through theory or anything like that. I have another podcast episode 116, which was on mastering a new skill. And we get into some meta learning and accelerated learning. We get into a lot of stuff more to do with ways to retain information in that episode. So maybe check that out too. But more importantly, give yourself goals. And the best part is that then you have something to show for it in the end. I always go back to the whole pottery theory, whereas like two people, one person is given 5 hours, let's say, to make the perfect clay pot. And then the other person is given like 5 minutes to make every single clay pot for 5 hours. And the person who's been going through doing it over and over and over, they're able to make a perfect pot in 5 minutes after doing it so many iterations instead of just refining the same thing over and over. Instead of looking at something and spending all this time just trying to work it all out, the other person is going through one onto the next each time, getting better and better as they go. And I think that by putting that pressure on yourself, by learning quickly, by doing it more times, that's where you get a lot of growth, and that's where it becomes muscle memory. So even if you do something and it sucks, don't be like, oh, well, this isn't working. Do it again. Do it again. Each time you do it, you're going to get better and better and better. Goro Fujita, I've been meaning to get on here for a long time. He works on Quill over at Facebook. And Goro's amazing. He's a speed painter. Like he inspired me to want to paint. Just talking about how he went through his journey of doing a speed painting every single day, and now he does it in VR, and he does these amazing clips in VR. And like I've told him so many times, like even if this wasn't in virtual reality, his style is so beautiful. But on top of that, like what amazes me these days is the fact that every day he's able to come up with these brilliant concepts. Even if it was a sketch, like whatever, like the idea and the fact that he's able to come up with these original ideas all the time is so amazing. So we're going to do an episode soon. I've been meaning to follow up on it. Just because he works at Facebook, we got to go through Facebook for everything. And unfortunately, I just haven't had time for the past 2 years, but we're going to do it. But yeah, it's just one of those things that he's an inspiration to me in the sense that he does it every day. And you know he's getting better and better and better. Whereas if you're not challenging yourself, you're not going to get that growth. So again, I hope this helps. I know for a few of you, this is going to be really critical. And for everyone else, I hope that you're able to get at least something from this. So I'm going to be back next week with Cameron Smith, who's one of the lead compositors at Weta. And we're going to talk about a lot of really cool stuff. I think in some ways I've mentioned Cameron even as far back as episode 1. So we're going to get into some really cool things about like how he started his career out, and a lot of really cool stuff at Weta that he's doing. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then episode 164, I'm going to be speaking with Brandon Voss, the son of Chris Voss, who was the head hostage negotiator for the FBI for 10 years. And we talk about a lot of things to do with negotiating. His father wrote Never Split the Difference, which is a best-selling and pretty much the book on negotiating. So we get into a lot of stuff, and I make it as applicable as possible to our industry. Lastly, if you want to check out the show notes, go to allanmckay.com/162. And while you're there, I have a lot of free training coming up this month. I'm going to be releasing a free visual effects crash course on Venom. We're going to go through a lot of really cool stuff. This is going to be amazing, and it's going to be free, but it's only to those on the Inner Circle, my free email list, which is where I put most of my content, videos, email templates, you name it, everything that I can, I put out to that list. So this is a chance for you to get on there, because I don't typically put out a lot of public stuff. I'm starting to a little bit more, but I want to reward those who take action. So if you want to get on there, go to allanmckay.com/inside. It's free. You can sign up there, and I'll be posting a lot of really, really cool stuff over the next couple of weeks. And lastly, do me the biggest favor. If you can share this episode with others, they can learn and benefit from it as well. I would be greatly appreciated, and I would appreciate you. That's it for now. Rock on.